Great. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for our August Tech Talk. This is an extension of last month's Tech Talk. So based on some questions, we are going to focus on cyber liability insurance. So today we are joined by Eric Vicencio. Eric has over 15 years of IT experience, specializing in security and IT compliance. He's the owner of Eder Casella technology. And today we have a special guest. Eric's joined by Ryan Conway. He has over 20 years of experience in the industry with a multi-line insurance agency serving both Northern Illinois and Southern Wisconsin. And then he runs the Conway agency, which has been in the family for 3 generations. So with that, I will turn it over to the guys and we will take a look at what's included in the insurance and why you need it.
Good afternoon, everyone. So like Rachel was saying, sometimes you just need to contact the individuals that know more about things than you do. And one discussion that Ryan and I have had quite a bit is surrounding cyber insurance. There's been some changes recently. We'll talk about those. And just in terms of getting cyber insurance and your renewals and things like that. And we want to bring it to the forefront for our customers on what's required nowadays. What are we seeing that's changed in the industry? So Ryan and I have known each other for quite a while, basically since I started this business. So yeah, we figured we'd have a pretty casual conversation, have you all listen in, and we'll talk about some of the changes. And if you have questions, or we can always address those. Or if you find that something's additional and you need some additional help, by all means reach out. So Ryan, in front of us we have a questionnaire. Yeah. You want to talk about where it's from?
It's an example questionnaire that I get from one of my carriers, Beasley Insurance, but there's a number of them. They all have questionnaires that they would either for new business or renewals. So some of the questions they ask are pretty basic, and then there's some that are more complicated where you'll have to talk to your IT representative to make sure you're doing these things. So one of the basic ones is, have you ever had a cyber incident, or have you been hacked?
See, and I think this is a really interesting question too, because cyber incident is such a nebulous right now, right? If you've given up credentials is a perfect example of that. Some companies actually consider that a breach nowadays, which is interesting. It could be a breachable offense, or it's something that they don't necessarily care about. So this one is a little bit vague. So it's an interesting question to ask right off the bat.
And then, the carrier, that's usually for me, a lot of times when people have that incident right there, that's what they have a close call, and that's what sort of gets them calling me. Okay. And then the next one, has there been any, for this would be more renewal, have there been changes in your operations? So are you now becoming more web-based? Are you doing online sales? There's changes in your operations.
Right. This could also, I think, even hit, like if you take care of money by any means, if let's say your main secretary left and she's the one that's doing all of the requests for payroll changes and doing that authorization, that actually could even flag this one as being a potential change as well. So for sure.
And big change in your revenues for the last 12 months. They just want, this is more renewals, just see if things have changed. You've grown dramatically, why, and things like that. Next one is, do you use multi-factor authentication for your cloud-based services and for all your remote access to your networks?
Yeah, multi-factors. In those of you that have been on my webinars in the past know that I preach the multi-factor can shut down threats pretty quick. 99.9% of all of the breaches that have happened in the last year, the individuals did not have multi-factor authentication. If you don't know what that is, that's where you have that extra layer, either cell phone texting, SMS works, or app-based. We like the Microsoft product, the Microsoft Authenticator, and Cisco Duo are kind of our bread and butter. So.
Okay, that's good. Eric's the man for that stuff. Do you require a virtual private network for your employees to access from a remote environment?
So when you look at like in the past couple of years, there's been a big change. A lot of people used to be able to access their work environment through RDP, like remote desktop, and that was open to the internet. And recently that's become a big threat. And a VPN makes it seem it's usually it's a software or hardware piece that's involved, and it makes it seem like the person's actually sitting in the office.
Okay.
So there's security that comes along with that. There's not to be too complicated, but a handshake that happens between the person's computer and the device that's issuing up the VPN, and it makes sure that you are who you say you are. It's much harder for an attacker to actually breach a network if a VPN is involved.
So would that relate like to if you're at Starbucks or Panera where you'd want the VPN on your computer?
To be honest, in most of those networks, I would say if you have to, a VPN is going to help save you in that scenario.
Okay.
Most of the public Wi-Fi, I don't trust them. I wouldn't trust them. There's so many attacks that could occur. But if you have to, in a pinch, use a VPN. It'll help you.
Okay. Do you regularly, at least annually, provide cybersecurity awareness training, including anti-phishing to all individuals who access your organization's network or confidential personal data?
Yeah, and I think this is another one of those that I've talked about on these webinars quite a bit. Phishing training and testing are huge. Your employees are probably your biggest threat to your organization, or if you don't necessarily, you're not as technologically savvy and you don't know what to look for, the threats are constantly changing. So knowing what the cyber criminals are doing nowadays, like the most recent one that I've seen is there's a picture, the entire email is a picture. So if you try to hover, they can mask it a little bit better. But if you click on the email at all, guess what? You've clicked on it, and it's a phish.
We had that happen to a client of ours where they changed an I. It was either a 1 to an I or an I to a 1. So when you look at the email address, they couldn't tell that it was different. So they were hacked because of that. And again, the training, like we use our Office Wizard training, so we can staff, we do that once a year where you go through and just has 30 videos, like 1 minute long. They can do it over a month, and it's just refresher on things that you need to do.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, any training is better than no training for sure.
And then do you implement critical patches and updates within every 2 months, update systems within 2 months? So you update them right away.
Yeah. And if you're not using an MSP, somebody that does what I do, and you're updating your own computer, totally fine. But some of these companies are now even asking for logs, which is super intriguing to me, because I'm like, those logs for a mom and pop shop, let's say you're a single sole proprietor and it's only you. Sometimes it might be a little bit harder for you to actually provide them that proof that you're patching within 2 months. But if you're too aggressive, that's the other caveat. If you're too aggressive and there's a bad Microsoft patch, because anybody will tell you they probably have run into a bad Microsoft patch. Like last year, there was a Ricoh patch, Ricoh printers. If you had a Ricoh printer and you took this Microsoft patch, it would blue screen, so it'd crash your computer. Made my week very interesting, I'll tell you that, as you can imagine.
Do you scan emails for malicious attachments and or links? So that's another that we need to do.
That one's fun. So Microsoft has some options, some really good partners that they have. Proofpoint's one of them. Mimecast is another. There is Spam House, some of the cheaper options. But basically all that is in the internet world, email server A goes to email server B, and usually the emails just go directly between the two, right? And the way that this sets up is email server A has to send to a filter first to get to email server B. So when it sends through, it scrutinizes those emails, looks for malicious links, looks for everything. But if you're just using Microsoft or Gmail or any other third parties that are out there, you're probably not. You probably don't have one of these in place. AppRiver is a company that does offer Microsoft products, and they actually have it built in. It's pretty neat.
Okay. Do you protect all your devices with antivirus, anti-malware, and endpoint protection software?
So this one we tend to get a lot of questions on as well. Endpoint protection can actually be separated from antivirus. Not all antiviruses are EDRs as they're referred to, but not all EDRs are antivirus. So it's kind of that nebulous. The one that we like probably the most is Bitdefender. It's pretty much all inclusive. As long as you get the right subscription level, you have both EDR and antivirus and anti-malware. So
Okay. And then make sure you back up all your data, critical data, make sure you back it up.
Yeah, backups are great. Some of these companies now are also making sure that not only are you backing it up, but you can actually restore from within like 3 to 5 business days. And check your backups to make sure that you can do that, because that's one of those things. We were actually just having a conversation about this before we started the webinar, that things like Carbonite, you might be backing up all your data, but you might not be able to get it very fast when in a pinch. So make sure that you know how long it's going to take you to actually fully restore.
Then are your backups kept offline or in the cloud away from your office, so that if your office burns up, you haven't lost your backup?
Yep. Yeah, just that. Move to the cloud. If you don't have a storage in the cloud that you can put a lot of your data, that's especially encrypted, that's you're not doing yourself any favors, especially if you have a scenario. I actually have a customer just recently that had 6 inches of water in the basement of their facility. They might be on this call, might not be, but their server was hit, but their backups, we have cloud backups 100%, but we also have a local storage device that was set higher than the actual server itself. And we were able to restore everything within, I think it was 2 days.
Okay, great. Then are your backups encrypted?
Mm-hmm.
Is that pretty standard?
It depends on, there's 2 different ways to actually encrypt it. The software can encrypt it, but then it can also be encrypted when it's out in the cloud.
Okay.
I actually recommend both, okay? Because if somehow your backups were accessed by a threat actor, and they're encrypted out there, let's say they're able to decrypt it on the tool that it is. Let's say it's, we use Backblaze as one of the examples. Backblaze could encrypt it, but if they are able to unencrypt it, the software on the actual customer side would then have an encryption key too. So it's kind of like wearing a belt and suspenders, as I like to say. Is it necessary? Probably not, but do I feel more comfortable with it? Oh yeah.
Okay. And then have you successfully tested your backups and restored them and made sure they worked for the last 6 months?
Yeah, set it and forget it is always the key for IT. We always come in and people are like, oh yeah, I set that up years ago. And I'm like, but have you tested it since you set it up years ago? If not, yeah, it's time. Test, test, test.
And do you have any end of life or end of support software on your network?
Oh,
I'm sure. Would that be like Microsoft Explorer?
Well,
That would be
potentially, yes. The one that we probably run into the most, old QuickBooks versions. Love those people that have the old QuickBooks versions on there that are, this is 2007 QuickBooks and I need you to still support it. And I'm like, it's not supported by anybody. Windows 7, Windows XP, I still run into those. Windows 7 is 2 years out of end of life out of the support, so it's terrible. Or old Adobe versions. People bought Adobe years ago and they expect to still be able to use it to infinity. And those become vulnerable over time. And that's what they're really looking for, the things that are going to become vulnerable.
Okay, and is your software segregated from the rest of the network?
Right. So if you have any of the software legacy stuff that's potentially, you could have it on the network, but you just need to make a physical separation between that and the rest of your network. So if you had Windows 7 and this one receptionist always wants to use it, but all she needs is access to the internet, you basically say, okay, she can have access to the internet, or he could have access to the internet, but that's it. That's all they can see.
Okay. And then, do you use Office 365? I was always wondering why this question.
I think really the reason why they would ask this, it's very similar to you use the Google Suite, right? Okay. Is your Office 365, it's all cloud-based, so everything's administered from the cloud. So they're going to want to know some very specific, if very specific things are protected with Office 365, because it's cloud. You can get to it through the cloud. So if you can get to it, so can anyone else.
I always didn't know if that's a positive or a negative. Everything's updated constantly.
That's true. That's true. That's actually a very valid point as well. Because if you're using box product, that's where you buy just like the home and office version of Office. You could choose not to take any of those updates, but 365 is very good about telling you, hey, you're taking it.
Yeah. Okay. And then If yes, use Office 365, you use any of these advanced threat protection. So there's like a lot of the ones that Eric just mentioned, AppRiver, Barracuda, Defender, Proofpoint,
Yeah.
some others.
Yeah, a lot of these are listed as email filters, but there's also certain applications like Mimecast, Proofpoint can also do this, and the Microsoft Defender. If you have a certain level of Microsoft account, if you've recently had to buy 365, you probably have run into like E1, E3, E5 licenses. A lot of people don't understand that. We do, so I can tell you with that comes a different level of all the features behind Microsoft.
Okay.
Microsoft actually has this amazing antivirus, anti-malware tool that also does some additional like scans of your emails, and it's the Windows Defender. It's not the one that you get by default with your computer, because if you don't have antivirus, they throw that on there for you. It's super advanced. You're probably going to want a nerd like myself or somebody else in the community that knows how to configure Microsoft Defender, because it's a beast.
Okay, so that would be part of Office 365, or that's separate that you would do?
It's that is a part of Microsoft 365 or Office 365, but it's once you get to a certain level of your license being high enough, that's when they allow you to have access to it.
Okay.
You could buy it just by itself, but it's worth it just to bundle it.
Okay.
And it's kind of like bundling your home and auto, right?
That's right.
It makes it way more affordable.
Yeah. So of those questions that we just went through, there's 5 of them that are critical for in your efforts to obtain cyber insurance. These are becoming more. There's going to be a harder time getting cyber if you don't have these. So question 4 was multi-factor authentication must be enforced for remote access. So you got to make sure everybody has that if they're going to access your network remotely. So that one's going to be a critical one. Question 5 must have multi-factor authentication set up for email access through a web app or a non-corporate device. So I was asking Eric the other day, what does that mean, non-corporate device?
So this would be, so let's say you are let's say you already have multi-factor authentication set up and it's on your corporate owned device. So my computer that I use at work. Let's say I want to use my spouse's device. Maybe they work somewhere else for a different company. Multi-factor authentication would have to prompt me when logging into my email on that device. That's what they specifically want. On your device, they're generally okay if you've trusted that device. So if you've ever seen a prompt where it says trust this device for 30 days, I think Facebook is one of these that also does it. A lot of people know this one, where do you want to trust this browser? And what they're doing is it's taking a thumbprint of your actual computer and the browser that you're using, and it's saying, okay, I know this device, we're good, stamp of approval. But if you go to a different device and try to log in, it's like, I don't know you. I just want to make sure that it's good.
Okay, and then if you answered false to that question, there would be a lot more questions from the carrier as to why. So then number 9, or the 9th question, this is the 3rd one. Do you protect all your devices with antivirus, anti-malware, and other endpoint protection? That one you have to do. And then
I agree.
number 10 is you regularly back up critical data. Again, that's just you have to. And then the last one was, are all backups kept separate from your network or in the cloud? Again, they want you to have the ability to get your stuff back versus having to pay the hacker if you can avoid it.
Oh, exactly.
So again, so that's sort of the 5 questions as far as what you need to do to make sure you have the best chance of getting a reasonably priced cyber insurance policy or getting access to one, because that's just what they're looking for you to have. So that's sort of where we're at there as far as sort of the main carriers is what they're looking for.
Yep. So Ryan and I have had actually a couple of conversations about what do we do for those customers that maybe don't have some of these safeguards or not going to have them in the next 6 to 9 months or something like that. Because I think if you're trying to implement these right now, well, one, if you haven't had an insurance renewal, I've been telling all of my customers, you need to start looking at these items seriously because they're becoming requirements. But do they have any options on different carriers that maybe don't have less requirements? Or
There may, we'll do 2 things. So I'll come back to this. Like, first thing, you don't, please, whatever you do, you want to move away from the riders on your business policy, you want to have a standalone cyber insurance policy where that's what it's designed for versus just being an endorsement, because there's a lot of coverage gaps with the endorsements. So short term, you just want to move to that. So getting back, there are a few carriers that have fewer questions. They're more or less, one of them is called Cowbell. It's a great company. It's asked 4 or 5 questions, and basically they're going to push you over the year and help you get to where you need to be by the next renewal. So they want. So that's one that we've been doing a lot of quotes. They ask like, who's your IT person? So whether it be, if you're a small business, it would be the owner, or, and then are you training your employees to look for these things? Because they're looking for you to do things to prevent it while you're getting to the multi-factor and all those things, getting those in place. But yeah, that Cowbell's one of them. They're very easy to work with. They'll give you a rating for how they look at you now versus your industry, which is nice. And again, they'll give you a report as well. So it's a great company to work with.
You know, one of the, I've had a couple of customers where they've actually come back to me where I had to sign their insurance application, which was very intriguing from my standpoint, because there is quite a bit of information. There's a lot of legal jargon at the bottom that you are certifying that it's all true. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows, like, if your IT provider has provided you with the information, don't change any of it, okay? Because that could really negatively affect your coverage if you think you're covered and you have a claim. They might drop you like a bad habit or deny your claim because some of the safeguards that are there aren't truly there.
You definitely need to listen to your IT advisor, and I mean, work to get to those things. These are in your best interest because you don't want to have claims, because this is your last defense. It gives you the resources to deal with the claim if it happens. Whereas hopefully you do all the training and you stop it before, so they don't get anywhere.
Right.
So that's why just training. And again, like I said before, that wiser training is something that we use. And again, it just has little 30 or 1 minute blips about training ideas as far as things like that can give to your staff and have them look at it. It makes them aware of what is phishing and other ways that they can get hacked.
Definitely. Or you just subscribe to my channel here and we can do the phishing training right here. I'll do it on the Zoom here. So yeah, is there anything else that you kind of want to let everybody else know about cyber insurance?
It's not, it isn't as complicated. I mean, there are a lot of questions, but once you work with an IT advisor and get your systems in place, it's not that hard to get. It's not as expensive. It's very reasonable, and there's lots of options. So don't be afraid to get it. It's a lot cheaper than getting hacked and having to pay somebody $20, $30, $100,000 to get your stuff back or get your system back in line or put you out of business.
Right.
So I mean, and it gives you the resources to pay someone like Eric to get restored. I mean, versus having to pay it all yourself.
Yeah, I think that would be one of the toughest things, because I've heard there's a statistic where in my industry, there's a bunch of discussions about how long it actually takes to recover fully from a breach, and it's 1 to 2 months.
And your cyber policy can give you lost business income in that time. It may also give you resources to promote yourself afterwards when you take a hit, because people hear you get hacked and now you're getting bad PR because of this. They'll be able to help you with marketing and get your reputation back. It gives you resources. And again, think of it, your premium that you pay for this policy, it's maybe same idea as paying, instead of you get an insurance policy, it costs you the cost of 1 hour with the attorney versus now you have $250,000, $1 million of insurance for that same few $100s, or it might be more depending on your business. It's all based on sales. So that would be the impact on the premium.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think at that point, we could probably even open it up for any questions. Did we have any come in?
Yeah, we had one question come in. So should any business that has an online presence have this type of insurance?
Yes.
That was an easy answer.
Does any business that uses email?
Yeah.
If you have a computer.
Yeah,
So
if you're a nonprofit and think that you're not a potential, place for a a threat to hit, you're grossly uninformed because everybody's at risk.
You have access, you could be hacked to get to somebody else.
Mhm.
I've had it where it discussed where subcontractors for a big GC, you have this multi-million dollar GC, they go after the sub who has, it's a 1 or 2 man operation, and they hack the sub to get into the GC.
Yeah. So you in recent breaches, I think a lot of them have come through HVAC companies.
Okay.
And the HVAC companies, I think that was what targets came through. And it was the HVAC company just, you know, they were connecting to make sure that the heating and air conditioning and it had access to the rest of the network, and boom, they're in. Then once they're in, they're hard to stop. So, okay.
That was all of the questions we have. So thank you guys. It was super informative and glad to have you with us, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. And we will be sending out the video replay after this and information on our next Tech Talk. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Rachel.
See ya.